Welcome to Cravings Control for Fat Loss. I'm your host, Laura Cavallo, former sugar binger, overeater, and yo-yo dieter turned fat loss and cravings coach for hundreds of busy women. Here at Cravings Control for Fat Loss, I'll be sharing mindset, movement, and metabolism strategies for those who are ready to ditch the fat diet cycle and slim down without counting calories, tracking points, or giving up any of the foods they love. Get ready to embrace progress over perfection, grace over guilt, and bring curiosity and learning to the inevitable ups and downs of your life. Expect a decrease in your cravings while seeing and feeling an improvement in how you look, how you feel, and your overall quality of life. I am so excited you're here, boo. Let's get started. Welcome to another episode of Cravings Control for Fat Loss. My name is Laura Cavallo, your cravings coach. And today I have a very exciting episode for you because we have our first guest speaker joining us on the podcast today, Dr. Laura Gouge. Dr. Laura Gouge is a licensed naturopathic physician and a certified nutritionist with nearly a decade of experience. Her focus is on integrative mental health, women's hormones conditions, and gut health. She currently has a virtual private practice, but she was formerly working as the medical director for a community-based mental health organization for over 3 years. Her passions lie in helping people overcome anxiety, IBS, sleep issues, and ADHD naturally without medication. On today's episode, Dr. Laura and I go over what naturopathic medicine is and how she can help her clients. We talk a little bit about how she got into this field of work and her own struggles with binge-eating disorder and what she did to remedy that. Then we also touch on sleep, stress, and gut health. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and let us know what you think. Welcome, Laura. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here today.
Of course. I'm so excited to have you and chat all things sleep, stress, ADHD, especially for women. So we're just going to dive right in. Tell me a little bit about what is naturopathic medicine? What is sort of your scope of practice and how does it differ from Western medicine?
So as a naturopathic doctor, my training was at naturopathic medical school. So in order to do that, I did a 4-year bachelor's degree. I studied public health, but it can be in whatever you want, so long as you get the prerequisites done. Then I did 4 years of naturopathic medical school. And so that included training in the conventional sciences like anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, as well as intensive training in nutrition, botanical medicine, how to utilize supplements, body work, and other holistic modalities. So after school, I did 2 years of residency and then a 6-month internship in a private practice. And then as far as the scope of practice, it's going to be regulated by each state. So depending on where you live, you may have access to the full scope of what naturopathic doctors can do, where we can use the best of holistic and conventional medicine. So I'm licensed in the state of Oregon, among other places. But in Oregon, we have a really broad scope of practice. We can be your primary care doctor. We can take health insurance. We can refill your prescriptions. And we can do all of the wonderful holistic things we do. Other states are going to be less friendly towards alternatives. And so you may have to find a naturopath who's going to be working more as a consultant with your health, where you can talk to them about different things that are available to you, but they can't be your primary care provider and they can't prescribe your medication. So it just depends state by state. So there's a couple of just associations of naturopathic doctors that you can look up to see providers in your state. And so I always think that's a good starting place.
All right, awesome. Thanks for clarifying that. So with naturopathic medicine, or if I were to look for a naturopathic doctor, can I go to a naturopathic doctor? What things do you specialize in that someone can come and work with you on?
Well, so just first of all, I would say to seek out a licensed naturopathic doctor, because there are online training programs where people can become certified as a naturopath, but they never actually see patients. So as part of my training and all of the accredited naturopathic medical schools, you have to get a certain number of contact hours with real people. People who do online certifications never actually have to see a real patient in order to get that certification. So look for a licensed naturopathic doctor.
That's a good tip. Thank you.
And then, all in the world of holistic medicine, everyone gravitates towards different things. So I tend to really work with people in the realm of hormones and mind body. And a lot of times that looks like mental health challenges, imbalances that are manifesting as anxiety and depression, ADHD, and then chronic fatigue, brain fog. I see a lot of women with ADHD. And then a lot of times there's gut and hormone issues that go with that. So things like irritable bowel syndrome, kind of functional GI issues, heartburn, period pain, PMS, PMDD. From my perspective, these things do go together. As a naturopathic doctor, I look at the body as a whole where we don't have these systems that exist independently of each other. The gut doesn't just exist all on its own. The gut talks to the brain, and the brain is responsible for secreting, telling us to make hormones or not make hormones. And so trying to look at our system as much as a holistic single entity that is somehow out of balance versus thinking of it as all these separate systems that need specialists.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question is why would someone seek out a naturopathic doctor versus, I don't know, what do you call them? Western medicine doctors, regular doctors?
Yeah, conventional providers.
Okay, mm-hmm. Conventional providers. I don't want to say regular doctors, right? Because I feel like naturopathic doctors are also regular doctors, right?
Thank you.
So one reason why people might seek out naturopathic medicine is for a more holistic, root-centered, root cause approach to health. Are there any other reasons that people might want to work with a naturopathic doctor versus a conventional practitioner or doctor rather?
So there's definitely a time and a place for both. I will just say, even for myself, I work with naturopathic doctors and other holistic providers. And then I've also gotten value from working with certain medical doctors and specialists. I think there's time and a place for both, depending on what's going on. So I tend to think that conventional medicine shines with more of the acute care. So if I broke a limb, was in an accident, even if I had a serious, clear infection like pneumonia, I probably would want a conventional doctor on my team and, pursuing the more conventional treatments for those things. I think where naturopathic medicine is often the route people want to go is when we're dealing with more chronic or somehow mysterious sort of symptoms, where in conventional medicine, they really work on algorithms. It's like, if you have this symptom, then you get this treatment. If this, then this. And there's a lot in our bodies that's outside of that algorithm. I can even just say with gut symptoms and gut health, a lot of times you don't feel better right away with just the basic things. And I know I saw a great gastroenterologist. He was one of the best doctors in Portland. I was having a lot of IBS symptoms. And he pretty much said, you should probably go see a naturopath because he didn't really have any good treatments to offer me. And so people tend to come see naturopaths either when they've tried all the conventional treatments, usually if they've seen, at least 5 different other providers and they've tried a bunch of stuff, or what they were offered just doesn't sit right with them. Mm-hmm. Like the idea that you're having chronic anything, let's say chronic headaches as an example, and the idea that you're just going to take a pain relieving medication for the rest of your life without ever asking, why is my body manifesting headaches all the time? What's going on? Is there a reason? Is there something out of balance? And so that's why people come to see us.
And thankful for you, because I feel like a lot of people get their questions answered going to naturopathic doctors without a lot of invasive procedures or another round of antibiotics or removing your gallbladder or routine procedures that people might equate with just getting older or something that maybe they've had before. So you mentioned your IBS issues briefly right now and seeing a specialist where you were living. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into naturopathic medicine or why you did, and maybe a fun fact about you growing up or something personal that you want to share. That's what I wanted to bring to this podcast too, is the personal journeys of a lot of women that are now helping other people and how we got into it. So feel free to share.
I'm happy to share pieces of my story if it can help anybody. So the journey to becoming a naturopathic doctor was definitely a long, winding, I call it a breadcrumb journey, where I feel like everything in my life slowly led me to where I am today. But going back in my childhood, I was confronted with the limitations of the medical system from a really young age. I was very healthy as a little kid. And then around age 8, I started to experience kind of mysterious symptoms that They were mysterious in the sense that there was no clear diagnosis from the evaluation or the doctor that I saw. It was like, it ended up being diagnosed as IBS, but I would get stomach aches, hives, fatigue. When I was a teenager, I started getting hormonal symptoms. I would get these random bouts of vertigo. And later on, I learned that the house I grew up in had a really bad case of black mold. And I think now we've learned a lot more about how mold can impact the immune system. And I think of it as a huge player in what was driving the imbalances that I had. But at that time, I just was having these kind of odd symptoms that I wasn't getting clear answers to. And there weren't great even medications, or there were no great answers. And I didn't get like miraculous healing from a naturopathic doctor at that age either. It took more time and I think a little longer on my journey before I would find some of the healers who really helped me connect with myself and kind of begin to unravel like what was driving a lot of those symptoms. But I think from that young age, like as I was going to school and then I was pre-med, I always knew in the back of my mind that the body's miraculous and mysterious. And I think that was really driving so much of what I wanted to do. And so then as I was thinking about what route I was going to take, do I want to be a medical doctor? I just kept really getting that I wanted to take potentially the riskier and more unconventional path, but that I wanted to do everything I could to help people heal at the deepest level possible. And so that was what inspired me to ultimately become a naturopathic doctor.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Growing up as a kid and having health issues and not, and your parents really leading the way on that and really just doing what they said and trying to figure out being in tune with your body. And we're so connected now as people in the health and fitness field, like with what our body is saying to us. But as kids, I think we're so disconnected and we just do kind of what people say and trust doctors and trust our parents. So that's amazing that you went into pre-med and then even took that unconventional quote unquote route and just said, let's help people heal from the ground up and from these root issues. Where did you grow up? Are you East Coast, West Coast?
I grew up in Pittsburg.
Okay.
So,
do you go back?
Right on the edge of the East Coast.
Yeah. Do you go back?
I do. Yeah. I mean, I try to make it back as often as I can. My family kind of has spread out, but I still love Pittsburg.
You said you lived in Portland for 10 years?
I did. It's where I went to school, and then school led to residency, led to an internship, which led to a job. So I was there for a really long time. So now I've relocated to Austin, Texas, and I've brought my practice virtual. So that's been a really cool new experience in the last year. Pittsburg to Portland to Austin.
Yeah. To all different corners of the country.
Exactly.
So in this last year, you've brought your practice virtually, and are you seeing people in person as well? Tell us a little bit about how people can work with you, connect with you, and how you do work with clients.
Yeah, so right now I'm all virtual. I'm open to the idea of getting a physical space here, but I really wanted to just kind of drop in, and because I went from working for a much larger clinic to being on my own, and so I wanted to give myself a little bit of space just to see what ultimately like I wanted to create. And I like working virtually. I think it's really nice for people to be able to connect with me from different parts of the country and be able to take meetings from work or home, because I work with a lot of busy professional types. I mean, I work with anybody. So as far as how to work with me, I think it just depends on where you live. So I'm a licensed naturopathic doctor in Oregon, Washington, and Vermont. And then I'm certified as a nutrition specialist. So as a nutritionist, I also work with people and consult. So if you don't live in one of the 3 states where I'm licensed, I can still offer consultation in the realms of nutrition and supplements and herbs. And to me, those are like the best parts of holistic and naturopathic medicine. So I do work with people all over. It's just slightly different in different states.
Yeah. The offerings and your recommendations for those particular clients. So I know now your focus is more working with women on hormonal issues, sleep issues, ADHD, but it took you probably some time to kind of get to this space where maybe you knew you wanted to work with this specific population or some of these ailments and issues. What were some aha moments in the last 10 years as a naturopathic doctor, or what was your journey and your process to kind of getting you here today and focusing on some of these more specific issues, gut issues, health issues, sleep issues?
In so many ways, it was informed by both my own health history and the people that kept coming to see me. And it's so interesting, even when I talk to my friends who are in the same field of work, the people who come to see us are completely different. And, in Portland, I had just an insurance-based practice. So really anybody could come in. And it seems like, I don't know, sometimes I almost think like from a spiritual perspective, like your specialty chooses you. So I was the medical director for a community-based mental health clinic for over 3 years. And so in that job, I worked exclusively with people with mental health complaints. Now, there was a huge trend of noticing all the female patients had hormone issues, painful periods, mood flares before their period, a lot of digestive issues, constipation and diarrhea, heartburn, IBS. It was just like people's whole bodies were not thriving, even though they were coming in just to talk about the anxiety or the ADHD or the bipolar.
Wow.
And so in that job, both received like a much deeper education around like how mental health is manifesting in our current culture, and especially like how having a history of trauma can impact the nervous system, but also like how effective it can be when we work with the body as a whole. And so that was a big part of just like my work history. And then my work is always informed by like my own history, understanding what it's like to have IBS, painful periods, mysterious symptoms. I feel like I can always relate, even if I haven't had the exact symptom that somebody else has had. And so my own curiosity too of like trying so many of the modalities that I use with people and really living it myself, of being on my own healing journey.
Wow. I love that. I have the chills. And to your point of how our focus kind of chooses us, like same with cravings and the overeating and the emotional eating for myself and my business and the women that I help, a lot was born out of my own struggles, and then meeting more women that were going through the same exact thing and my clients, and saying, wow, there's a need here. We need to help people on a deeper scale and a little bit more specifically. So share a little bit with me on how eating can impact hormones, how eating can impact sleep, and why you are so passionate about nutrition yourself, having your degree in it and having that be a prime focus of your practice as well.
Yeah, it's such a big question, because when we talk about nutrition and then how it can impact hormones, we have so many different hormones in the body that are doing different things all day long, and they're just pulsing and they're always active and they're always doing things. I mean, I think sometimes as women, we're like, I just feel like I have a hormone imbalance. And there's this sense of, what does that mean? Because we have so many hormones that are doing things all day long. And so I will just say, whenever someone comes in and says that, usually it means there's some combination of just not feeling quite right. Usually like low energy, maybe feeling tired after meals, not recovering from workouts, difficulty sleeping. A lot of times there's that tired but wired, where during the day it's like so tired, and then at bedtime all of a sudden it's like you can't sleep. You're just totally wired, and it's the worst feeling. You're looking forward to sleeping all day and then you're wide awake. So there's so many other symptoms we could get into, gut health, periods, all of that. But so whenever I'm starting to think about nutrition, I really want to get a sense of what is out of balance, like what is going on. Not everything is going to be food related, but some things will be. And, it's almost like untangling a big web. And so it's not like there's just one diet that I recommend for everybody. Rather, I want to think about, how can I support healthy blood sugar? I think that's often one of the foundations, that if our blood sugar is really dysregulated, a lot of other things in our body are going to feel dysregulated. And so I tend to recommend a plant predominant diet. So that just means lots of fiber, lots of fruits and vegetables. And I've landed on this just from the real scientific consensus of, with all the research out there about nutrition, one of the few things I think everybody can agree on is that we need dietary fiber. It's what fuels the gut microbiome. It's essential for detoxification. And then even just from a practical point of view, it has us feel full. Like we have to feel full from something, and fiber is going to probably be the healthiest thing. And it's paired with all of these antioxidants and nutrients and phytonutrients. So I focus on fiber. And I feel like that alone often gets really great results for people. And so looking at fiber, that's going to just immediately help with the blood sugar. And then looking at, can we create regularly spaced meals? Make sure there's fiber, make sure there's protein. I am not really into the high fat trend right now. I think that, fat does matter, as far as thinking about cardiovascular risk and other disease risk. It can be inflammatory, but having some fat for satiety, I think, is really important. So being moderate with our fat and really into protein and whole food carbs. So that's kind of like the general picture of like the type of diet I tend to recommend. And then if I have patients who say, my gut's a mess if I eat fiber, or I just thrive on like a high fat diet, then we work with them we start where they are and we see what kind of results we can get for people. So as far as other specific like hormonal imbalances, I think it's really key to really be specific about like what we're talking about. The other one that I think is really worth mentioning, just especially in the world of weight loss, is I focus on the two hormones that tend to regulate appetite. So ghrelin is our hunger hormone. It says, hey, it's time to eat. And leptin is our satiety hormone that says, you're full, stop eating. And so I can just share a little bit from my own personal story, is that I struggled a lot with binge eating. When I was in like my late teens, early 20s, I really struggled with binge eating and I felt totally out of control. And I thought I just didn't have enough willpower. So I did what I think most women that age do, is I tried to diet. I tried to go on extreme diets. I tried a vegan diet. I even tried a raw vegan diet. I tried going on fasts, and it just got worse and worse. And after I had gained maybe like 30 pounds, which honestly was probably only that amount because I had youth on my side, I discovered something called leptin resistance, which is essentially where your body becomes resistant to the hormone leptin. And so you don't get the signal of being full. And so with overeating and binge eating, yes, I think there's a very real like mental and emotional component, and it's great, get therapy, all of that. But I noticed that even after I had been in therapy and I was calm and I wasn't anxious, I felt this drive to eat. Like my hunger just felt out of control. And so when I learned about leptin, that was like a huge light bulb moment for me of doing some really simple things to change my way of eating and what I was eating in order to like begin to resensitize. And when I felt that fullness cue start coming back, it was the best feeling in the world. So I think that's just like an anecdote of saying we have all these different hormones and there's going to be like slightly different approaches. Now, the diet for leptin resistance is very similar to the diet that I described. It's like generally whole food carbohydrates, enough protein, just enough fat, not a lot of refined sugar, but it's a pretty reasonable diet. It's not extreme in any way. And the tweak for that is I was eating 3 meals a day and avoiding snacking, because that really helps to keep your leptin sensitive and to really feel those satiety signals. And so whenever anyone comes in to see me, there's often like subtle and specific tweaks I'll make to their protocol depending on like where the imbalance really seems to be showing up, if that makes sense.
That's fascinating. And thank you for sharing that personal story about what you struggled with. And obviously, our listeners are right in that realm, right? Overeaters, binge eaters, emotional eaters, mindless snackers, all overnight, nighttime eating. So your mention of leptin and ghrelin, it actually comes at an interesting time, because I just posted a reel today about how not having high quality sleep can increase ghrelin and decrease leptin, if I'm remembering correctly.
Exactly.
And so when you're, fatigued or tired, you notice that you eat more throughout the day, right? Not even consciously. You're just like, I'm heading to the kitchen and I'm grabbing a handful of crackers. And you're like, I just had lunch. What's going on? I can't satiate myself. I can't feel full. So thank you for sharing that about leptin and ghrelin. It lets me know that I'm on the right path. I'm like, okay, yes, we're talking about the right things, right? But also to your point of bringing that leptin sensitivity back it's really interesting to hear more of those 3 square meals versus, eating more consistently. And is that because obviously we're not talking about insulin, we're talking about leptin, but similar to what insulin would do is kind of it goes back down and it kind of regulates in between meals. So it's not having to shuttle that glucose into the muscles or the liver, whatever it is. Is that sort of the same system?
Exactly. The idea is really that we're going to let it go through a full cycle. So we eat, the hunger, the ghrelin goes down, leptin goes up, we feel satisfied, and then let it run its full cycles to where it comes back down, and then we eat again. So snacking in and of itself isn't bad. And if you feel like you have great hunger and satiety signals, it's fine to snack. But just for people who really have trouble feeling when they're full, not snacking can be a really powerful tool. And I'm not talking about restriction. I'm talking about eating robust meals. And it kind of takes a little trial and error to be able to figure out how much food you need in one meal to make it to your next meal. But it can be a really great tool.
So at Laura Cavallo Coaching, the way we coach our clients is through Satisfull plates, right? So we lead with a lean food, which is any sort of protein. It could be plant-based protein. It could be chicken, turkey, it can even be beef or pork or whatever people prefer. Then we add a detox option, which is fruit or vegetable. Those 2 portions together make up most of the plate. And then we add in a little crave. Crave is the thing that gives you that yum yum. It's the slice of toast. It's the piece of bacon. It's the half of the muffin. This way, we're eating that crave, even if it's something sweet or something fatty, with something else so it digests a little bit slower. And typically, I like to recommend that you're waiting between 2.5 to 4 hours until your next meal, depending on your hunger levels, obviously. And what we're doing is we're trying to help clients recalibrate that hunger, recalibrate those cravings. So typically for a leptin cycle, obviously I know it's going to probably be individual for each person. Do you feel like there is sort of a roundabout number to give people of like, wait 3 hours for a full cycle or 3 to 4? What's your recommendation on that?
My recommendation would be a minimum of 4 hours, with the ideal being 5 to 6, which honestly,
wow,
it's even a stretch to be able to go that long.
Yeah.
I feel like you have to kind of eat an early breakfast. Like you have to be like on your meals, and sometimes with work and things like that. But I've had great success with people even just going for about 4 hours. And sometimes that means eating 4 meals a day or like 3.5. And I think that can still be great. I think it's just really letting your meal digest before you're adding another meal.
And that'll depend on the individual, right? So if someone's up and walking around and maybe more active, that meal might digest a little bit quicker or faster versus someone that's more sedentary. Maybe their food's kind of just hanging out for a little bit longer and they might not need a meal as quickly.
Right. But we want to be able to go at least 4 hours between our meals.
Wow. That's really
Which often means eating a little bit more. I had to kind of train myself because I had no real, I didn't get a lot of structure from my parents on like how to make a meal. And so I would eat these little tiny meals. And one thing tracking helped me with in the beginning was realizing that I would make these breakfasts that looked healthy but had 250 calories. And that was why I was crashing 2 hours later, like when I was in school. So sometimes tracking is great to be like, actually, this is what, 600 calories looks like on a plate.
Definitely. Yeah, I think macro tracking can definitely be of use for some people for a period of time. That is so fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing that. So while we're on the topic, or while I mentioned sleep, let's share a little bit about how you help clients move through healthier sleep routine or remedy sleep issues, and I guess what the biggest sleep issues are that you see people coming in with.
Sleep is also near and dear to my heart. I had anxiety. I had insomnia when I was a teenager that persisted until I was in my early 30s. And
oh my goodness,
it was the worst. I tried everything. I tried every supplement. I tried multiple sleep medications because I got to the point that I was desperate. Like I just wasn't getting good sleep. And I ended up working with a sleep specialist and ended up then getting additional training in how to really offer evidence-based sleep interventions. It's actually interesting. Of all the conventional specialists, the medical doctors who treat sleep are very holistic, like a true medical doctor, not a psychiatrist. A psychiatrist might be informed in this, but they might also just offer you pills. But actual sleep specialists tend to be very knowledgeable on the circadian rhythm and working with all the different reasons that we don't sleep. And so it's definitely a passion of mine because I think There's nothing worse than wasting money on supplements or taking a medication that doesn't, my experience is it doesn't usually, it might help, but it's not the same as getting 8 hours of quality sleep that your body got on its own.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of different things that drive sleep issues. Some like the biggest theme that I would see is disconnection and dysregulation with our circadian rhythm. And the circadian rhythm is just responsible. It's our innate drive that says, be awake, go to sleep. And it really directs the rhythms of our body from when we're hungry to when we feel different things. And so it's why most human beings are, up when the sun is up and then we sleep when it's dark out. For the general person who just doesn't sleep that well, getting in sync with the circadian rhythm of nature can help quite a bit. So some of the best things you can do that are, quite trendy right now, if you look on social media, is to get outside in the first hour of being awake and be outside for 15 minutes. You could do a short walk or just sit on your patio. You can also use a light box. That's something I used a lot living in Portland, where it was pretty dark at the hours I had to wake up for work. And so just getting that 15 minutes of bright light, getting outside several times during the day, even if it's just for 5 or 10 minutes. And then in the ideal world, you view the sunset too. I think that's kind of advanced and most of us aren't having that much time to be outside. But doing that in addition to controlling the light in your environment. And so, minimizing bright light at night, using more dim lighting, red lights, lamp lighting, candles, getting off your screens 1 to 2 hours before bed, like correcting the light in your environment will begin to change everything with sleep. Now, for anyone who's listening who's dealt with like serious insomnia and they've probably tried a lot of this, I just want to say, like, I have a lot of compassion because I remember hearing all these things too. And I had mastered my sleep hygiene and all of that. So if the basics like regulating your circadian rhythm and your light and your sleep hygiene are not quite doing it, I'd recommend working with a specialist. And then there's all sorts of different things that can be going on. There's actual circadian rhythm disorders, which is where your rhythm is just sort of like, it's like your internal clock is set to the wrong hour. And so for some people, it's set really late. That's how my insomnia was. So if I stayed up till 2 or 3 in the morning, I could probably get good sleep, but that didn't work for my life of having to get up at, 6 or 7 in the morning. And some people have really earlier advanced stage circadian rhythms where they get tired at 5 o'clock. And then it's really a problem to be able to live life and have a partner and, just be up in the early evening. And then there's also anxiety that can contribute to insomnia. And just the sheer act of like not being able to sleep for a period of time can then create anxiety and stress around bedtime. And so there's something called CBTI, which is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, that can be really helpful. So if the basics haven't worked, I always recommend seeing if you can get in to see a sleep specialist or someone that can work with you. I love working with people around these behavioral things because I feel like they are so effective, and there's nothing more rewarding than like finally getting good sleep if you haven't been. And I use some supplements to kind of support gentle things, like really low dose melatonin can be pretty evidence-based. Sometimes I use herbs that can help with relaxation, but we shouldn't need a lot to help us sleep. It's something our body should be able to do. And if it's not happening, there's something out of balance.
Wow. Interesting. All of these night owls are now like, what is going on with my circadian rhythm? So do you believe that some people are night owls though, or do you believe that their circadian rhythm is just off?
No, definitely. I think we definitely all there's slight tweaks to our circadian rhythm. Like I can say for myself, I had what was called a delayed circadian sleep disorder. So it was like pushed too late. I was able to bring it back. So instead of falling asleep at 2 a.m., I can fall asleep at 11 p.m. But it would be a stretch for me. Like I would never naturally want to go to bed at 9 p.m., which is when my husband loves to fall asleep. So we go to bed at different hours and that's fine. But some people are just going to be, I'm more of a night owl. And so I have to be mindful to like keep my sleep routines kind of on a consistent, because just left to my own devices, they would creep late again. Like that's kind of where my clock likes to go. And some people are early. Like, I've had patients who wake up at 5 a.m. no matter what, and it's the worst. They hate it because it's like, I'd love to be able to sleep in, but like their clock is just set early. So there is just some personal variation in where our clocks land. Okay. But there's definitely things we can do to adjust them to be able to live the lives we want to live.
And stay more in sync with the sunrise and the sunset.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you talk about low dose melatonin, is that like 5 grams or 2.5 grams, or is it depending on like body weight?
So what's actually closest to the physiologic amount of melatonin that we secrete, the amount that we make is so low. So when I'm actually dosing it, I'm using 0.3 to 0.5 milligrams typically.
Wow.
So much less than most of us are taking.
I won't even tell you how much I took last night.
Well, in the higher doses, it actually functions more as an antioxidant. So there are some interesting studies around using high dose melatonin for conditions like endometriosis and like the hormone related cancers, breast cancer, prostate cancer. So it's not 100% bad. It just may not be like doing what you want it to do for your sleep.
Right. And not something I want to be relying on consistently. I was on the West Coast and I've been having trouble falling asleep at my regular 9 o'clock time, because I am a wake up at 6:30 type of person. So I've been going to bed at midnight, 1 a.m. the last week. And I'm like, I cannot do this anymore because I felt like a zombie. So I defaulted to my melatonin last night. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it.
Well, short term for jet lag, and jet lag just literally means like if you were in different time zones, then your body is off. Melatonin can be really helpful in the short term, but honestly, the best thing is to like sync to your environment. So try to get up around when you normally would and get bright light at that time, and that can help you adjust to the time zone that you just changed to.
Okay, yeah, going was great. Going, I synced really easily. Coming, I was like, oh no. This is tough.
Yeah.
Well, that's really fascinating. Thanks for sharing that. And, interestingly enough, I've had some conversations with people that do have insomnia recently and have kind of been at a loss, as well as a couple clients that are night owls. And they're like, is it bad that I don't wake up early? And I'm like, it's not bad. It's how your body syncs, but maybe coaching them to get to that little bit closer to that 11 p.m. or even 10 p.m. hour is going to help them. And that's what we've been working on. But I want to let them know it's okay that if they're night owls. So you mentioned anxiety. I'm sure that you see a lot of people coming in with, to your point of when you were working in the mental health clinic, people with anxiety and mood disorders and mental health disorders. So tell me how anxiety and stress in particular, how that can relate to maybe hunger and cravings as well. I know we talked about ghrelin and leptin before, but anxiety, how that can impact nutrition, but also how you help your clients with anxiety and sort of stress-related disorders.
Well, with anxiety, I feel like I wish there were like one magic bullet that would just help everybody. But I feel like with anyone experiencing anxiety, the work is always multifaceted, like that it can be driven by different imbalances, and then it's usually helped by different things. But anxiety, like really anything with our brain or our mental health, can impact hunger and satiety. And it can really go both directions. Some people who are anxious tend to have very low appetite. I mean, I've had patients with severe anxiety where they were really struggling because they would get nausea and sometimes even vomiting with eating. Other times, anxiety drives more of like an overeating pattern, and it's like really hard to feel full, or they feel full and just there's still this like drive to eat. And so I feel like it can go both directions, which is something that's just very interesting about anxiety, that the kind of the same symptom can present in such different ways in different people, even in different times of our lives. I mean, I think many of us have probably had the experience of emotional eating with a certain type of anxiety and the inability to eat with other types of anxiety. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm working with someone, the first thing I like to look at is just their life circumstances, just as a whole. And is there a rational, mental, emotional, or physical reason they might be manifesting anxiety? So is there something in one of their body systems, like their thyroid, that's out of balance? Is there something in their work or their life that could be driving it? Is there something in their home environment? Like, is there a reason? And it's not to say it's your fault, just rather, is there a reason, like cause and response? And I also will look for nutritional imbalances, like so specifically looking at different mineral levels. Sometimes we'll do labs. And then I always look at diet, caffeine, sugar, exercise. Can we support the nervous system to be more resilient to stress? Is there a sleep disorder? Because, like untreated sleep issues can manifest as anxiety. And then it's like a cycle, and then you get worse sleep. So kind of like trying to uncover all the different stones to see if we can really figure out, is there something in particular that's driving it?
Wow. That's fascinating. And to your point of mineral consumption relating to anxiety, there's a lot of, to what you mentioned before, trends going on Instagram right now about like potassium and magnesium and sodium and get your electrolytes. Is that connected to anxiety and stress, and if not, what minerals do you look for in these labs?
Yeah, I definitely look for magnesium. I will run magnesium labs sometimes, but most people benefit from it, and it's a pretty generally recognized as safe mineral to supplement with. So I think magnesium can be very helpful for anyone who's experiencing anxiety. And then I'll also look at zinc and copper levels. That's a little bit more nuanced, but a lot of times there can be really high copper and not quite enough zinc. And so wanting, those minerals work together. Like if you take a lot of zinc, it'll bring copper down. So I don't tend to recommend zinc just haphazardly, rather to like work with someone who's informed on it. We can use labs, we can guide our supplementation in an intelligent way. And, I think that just generally making sure that we have minerals and we have electrolytes is something that's important. Potassium and sodium can often be sufficient through our diets. I use electrolytes pretty regularly because I do things where, I exercise, where I'll sweat, or I'll go in the sauna. So I think really increasing electrolytes can be helpful for that. And a lot of people notice more energy just when they're really supporting their electrolytes. So, it's not something bad to add to water, but I don't do it with everybody.
Right. Yes. Gotta give that individualized approach. So you mentioned gut health earlier, and gut health I know is connected to so much. But while we're on the topic of anxiety and stress, or anxiety, stress, sleep, all the things, tell us a little bit about gut health in general, maybe a topic that you want to discuss about it, or maybe some of the most common challenges that you're seeing out there for people.
Well, I feel like gut health is central since we have to eat food, and we have to eat food basically every day. How we're digesting our food is going to impact the quality of our lives. And if we're having any pain or difficulty with digestion, it's going to greatly impact everything in our bodies, from are we getting the nutrients we need? Is it driving inflammation in the body? Are there potentially things out of balance in our gut? Whether it's just bacterial imbalances in the microbiome, is there some sort of infection or parasite? I will say parasites are also a trend. They can be very real, but I don't think everybody needs to parasite cleanse for eternity, but they can exist. So, is there an obvious imbalance? Is there a fungal imbalance? Is there overt inflammation in the gut? Things like that can really impact our day-to-day life, how we assimilate nutrients, and a lot of times set up cycles of if our gut's not doing very well, then we're not absorbing our nutrients, and then we're not getting what we need to heal. And so I think just looking at the overall state of gut health, are we having symptoms? How are we doing there is a great starting place to just see where we can potentially bring the body more balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The first step in my journey with overeating and binge eating, and also just constipation, I was constipated most of my life. I went to the bathroom maybe once a week until my early 30s, until I realized, oh, that's not normal. And then I started pooping every day, and I was like, I never want to go back to how I was. But it came down to my gut, and I had been on a lot of antibiotics as a kid. Of course, I was over consuming sugar for the majority of my life. And so I had a lot of candida overgrowth, leaky gut. I self-diagnosed myself through a lot of research, but after my own protocols of really taking out that sugar and repopulating that healthy gut flora, my life changed. So I feel that gut health is, to your point, like the second brain. It is so connected to everything, to mental health, emotional health, sleep, our skin, every expression in our body, right? And so I know you've been doing a lot of work changing really quickly and hopping into our last topic on ADHD. And this is fascinating because I feel like a lot more women our age in their 30s and 40s are coming out now being diagnosed with ADHD. And I would love your thoughts on it. I would love to hear kind of what you're doing to help people and yeah, your experience with it lately.
So there is a very real trend around women with ADHD. So historically, like in the 80s, young boys were disproportionately diagnosed with ADHD. Like, I don't know the exact number, but so many more boys were being diagnosed than girls. And that's still true today, but I think now it's a little closer. It's like 2 to 3 times more boys will be diagnosed than girls, even though likely we probably see ADHD in both genders. It's just, it expresses in different ways. And so I think the field is really starting to catch up and see that, oh yeah, women have always had ADHD. We're just more likely to manifest it as low self-esteem, anxiety, and depression. We're probably more likely to be inattentive, which can show up in the classroom as just sitting there perfectly still and quiet and not saying much. So just assuming, oh, she's bored or she's not interested. It could show up as being restless or fidgety, but it doesn't get the same attention from parents or teachers as like the stereotypical little boy who's running and screaming through his kindergarten classroom at the top of his lungs, where it's very clear, like, we need to do something about this.
Wow.
I think for girls, we also, in the conditioning, like the social conditioning that we get, we're so much more likely to mask our symptoms. And so it's like, if school is hard, instead of saying, hey, this feels really hard, we're more likely to just work twice as hard and not tell anybody about it. So I think there's a lot of ways we can mask it with being perfectionists and working harder, not speaking up, just assuming things like, oh, maybe I'm just not as smart as the other kids, and developing lower self-esteem. So there is a huge trend of women being diagnosed. I think now a lot of providers are being a lot more savvy that, like, maybe it's not just anxiety, maybe there's something else that's driving it. Or women are also advocating for themselves. I mean, and I think social media, like the good and the bad of social media, is that people see themselves in these posts and then they advocate for assessments and diagnosis and things like that. So it's definitely an interesting thing that is happening right now.
Definitely. And I would love to end our conversation on women advocating for themselves. And I think with the advent of social media, it's made people more informed, but also it's a double-edged sword because there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I want to thank you for your work and your time today and your approach. I really do appreciate and honor what you do, because I think I told you I wanted always to be a naturopathic doctor and just really help people with root cause issues, because I know that so much is connected to your point of trauma or gut, and it's all connected, right? It's not separate. So are there any final thoughts that you want to share with us? Is there any programs or anything that you have going on or anything that you want to promote to our listeners that might be able to help them?
Sure. So I have 2 free resources that you can find, whether through my website or my social media handles across all platforms. I'm most active on Instagram and TikTok, Dr. Laura Gouge. So DrLauraGouge. That's also my website. And I have a free anti-anxiety playbook, which is my top 10 tools for anxiety. It includes everything from the most effective supplements to breathing techniques to different tools you can use. I put my favorite links to YouTube, I make it as comprehensive as possible. And then I also have a free ADHD supplement guide. So those are going to be the top supplements that I use in practice. I include my favorite brands and doses, and both of those are totally free, and you can get them through my social media or my website.
Awesome.
So I'd say that's the best place. If you want to follow up with me, if you want to work together, you can, shoot me a message, send me a DM, or just reach out through my website.
Perfect. We'll actually link those free resources in our podcast resources section for everyone, as well as your Instagram and your website, so people can find you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, Laura. I Love getting to talk to you today. And I just love seeing the work you've been doing and how it's evolved over the time that I've known you, and how special and rare it is to have someone in the world of like nutrition and fitness coaching that is knowledgeable on so many different topics and is using, I feel like you've created a really unique and fun methodology that's still based around a lot of the core scientific health principles of like how we should generally take care of our bodies, but making it really approachable. So just want to acknowledge the work you're doing.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. All right, that's all we have for you today. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye, guys.